You ever think someone you love would betray you in a heartbeat? That's exactly what happened with my grandma. She was the sweetest, most trusting woman you could imagine, the kind of person who always saw the good in everyone, no matter what. And because of that, she made a decision that would change our family forever. She trusted my aunt with her life savings. Every dollar she had worked so hard for, 700 zalalarzan in total, thinking my aunt would care for her, protect her, and treat her like family. I'll be honest with you, I never imagined what came next. It started off so innocently. Grandma moved in with my aunt, thinking it would be easier to manage her life, and she believed my aunt genuinely wanted to help. She would talk to me on the phone sometimes, excited about how her days would be easier, how she felt safer. I could hear the joy in her voice, the relief in knowing she was going to be cared for. And me. I was happy for her, trusting that my family would treat her right. After all, my aunt was family, how bad could it be? But then, the first cracks appeared. Small things at first, things that seemed innocent enough, my aunt not picking up calls, small excuses, subtle comments that didn't sit right. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed, maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed. But deep down, something gnawed at me. I started paying more attention, listening more carefully, watching, and what I discovered, well, it shook me to the core. One night, everything came crashing down. Grandma called me in tears, panic in her voice. "They've locked me out?" she said. I don't know what to do. Just those words hit me like a punch. I couldn't believe it. My aunt, the very person she had trusted with her entire life savings, had forced her out, like she was nothing, like she was disposable. I remember sitting there on the phone, feeling a mix of rage and helplessness, but also this strange clarity. I couldn't let this stand. I went to get her that night. Seeing her sitting on the porch, shivering, clutching her coat tightly, it broke something inside me. She looked at me with those wide, trusting eyes, and I promised her, right then and there, that she would be safe, that no one would treat her like this again. I helped her back into my home, made her a warm meal, and sat with her as she cried, not just because of what had happened, but because she had trusted the wrong person. And you know what? That's the moment I knew this wasn't just about her savings. It was about justice, loyalty, and making sure the truth came to light. Over the next few weeks, I pieced together what had happened. I didn't just want to protect her. I wanted to understand it. I dug into every interaction, every conversation, every small action my aunt had made that hinted at her intentions. It was shocking, and honestly, it was painful. But I also realized something important: patience would be my greatest weapon. I wasn't going to confront her recklessly, because I needed more than just revenge. I needed a plan that would ensure my grandma was safe, and that the truth came out in a way that everyone could see. And here's the crazy part. I never expected what the will would reveal. Months of tension, months of quiet planning, and just when we thought the story had reached its peak, the lawyer opened that envelope, and everything changed. Every sneaky move, every betrayal, every lie my aunt had hidden, it was all about to be exposed in front of everyone. Even I, sitting there, couldn't predict how shocking it would be. So, stick with me, because I'm going to take you through everything: the trust, the betrayal, the planning, the waiting, and finally the moment of truth that no one saw coming. By the end of this story, you'll understand just how far greed can go, how loyalty can save the day, and why patience sometimes delivers the most satisfying justice. Before everything blew up, Grandma's life seemed peaceful, almost idyllic. She had lived a long, full life, working hard to save every penny, planning for her future, and dreaming about her final years being comfortable, surrounded by people she loved. That's the thing about her. She believed in family above everything else. She trusted that blood meant loyalty, that people who called themselves family would honor that trust. And because of that belief, she made one of the biggest decisions of her life, handing over her life savings to my aunt. You have to understand, 700 zalazan isn't just numbers on a paper. That was her security, her freedom, her years of hard work packed into something tangible. And she gave it away with a simple plea: "Please care for me." I remember hearing her say it over the phone, almost with a quiet hope that it would be enough to ensure her safety. She wasn't asking for much. She wasn't greedy or demanding. She just wanted respect, love, and care in her final years, that's all. At first, everything seemed normal. Grandma moved in with my aunt, and life appeared calm. She would talk about the little joys, sitting in the garden, enjoying tea, reminiscing about old memories. But I couldn't shake a feeling that something was off. Even small things started to bother me. The way my aunt would dismiss Grandma's questions, the subtle impatience in her tone, the way she seemed overly focused on paperwork and money. At the time, I brushed it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I just wanted to see the best in people. But deep down, I knew I had to stay vigilant. It wasn't just about money. It was about Grandma's dignity. She deserved to live her life without fear, without manipulation, without feeling like a burden. I remember one evening, calling her and hearing a slight tremor in her voice. She told me about how my aunt joked about moving her things around, restricting access to certain parts of the house. It was subtle, almost laughable if you didn't know the bigger picture. But I did. I could feel it. And I realized that greed doesn't always come with shouting. It comes quietly, with small, creeping control, with manipulation masked as concern. I began piecing things together, almost like detective work. Every phone call, every visit, every minor complaint she had seemed to form a pattern. My aunt's intentions were no longer hidden behind polite smiles. They were visible if you paid attention: the way she managed Grandma's finances, the way she made decisions without consulting her, the way she slowly isolated her. It wasn't overnight. It was subtle, almost invisible. But by the time I recognized it fully, it had already started to take hold. What hurt the most was knowing how much Grandma had trusted her. She believed she had made the right choice. She believed family would honor her, care for her, and respect her life's work. And I hated knowing that this trust was being betrayed. I felt a mix of anger and responsibility. I needed to protect her, and I needed to find a way to expose the truth without causing her unnecessary pain. I started documenting everything. Notes, phone calls, little things she mentioned in passing. Everything. I didn't want to jump to conclusions or act recklessly. I knew that patience would be my strongest ally. This wasn't just about proving her wrong. It was about ensuring Grandma's safety, her dignity, and eventually, her rightful inheritance. Every observation became a piece of the puzzle, and every small detail brought me closer to understanding the depth of my aunt's greed. Meanwhile, Grandma tried to stay positive. She didn't want me to worry. She would tell me, maybe I'm imagining things. Or, she doesn't mean it that way. But I could hear it in her voice. The uncertainty, the fear, the worry that she might be cast aside despite everything she had done. It was heartbreaking. But it also strengthened my resolve. I promised myself I wouldn't let her down. Not now, not ever. I also reflected on the family dynamics. My aunt was cunning, polished, always knowing how to present herself as the perfect daughter, the perfect caregiver, and that made it harder for anyone to see the truth until it was too late. That's why patience was crucial. I had to wait, observe, and gather undeniable evidence before any confrontation. Acting impulsively could have exposed Grandma to more manipulation, more emotional harm, and potentially lessened her chance of getting justice. Over time, I realized that this story wasn't just about money. It was about control, trust, and human nature. People can betray those closest to them in ways that seem impossible to predict, but the key lies in careful observation, planning, and timing. And I was ready to wait for the perfect moment. The moment when the truth couldn't be hidden, when everyone would finally see the reality for what it was. Little did we know, that moment was coming faster than anyone expected. The tension was building quietly, like a storm on the horizon, and we had no idea just how shocking the final revelation would be. Grandma had endured manipulation, subtle cruelty, and betrayal, but she had also inspired me to act with strategy, patience, and integrity. And that's the thing about stories like this. They're not just about the dramatic moments, the shouting matches, or the courtroom confrontations. Sometimes the most powerful moments are the quiet ones. The phone calls late at night, the whispered reassurances, the careful observations that no one notices. And those quiet moments were what set the stage for the incredible twist that would change everything. So stay with me, because the next part isn't just tension. It's a rise in conflict, manipulation exposed, and secrets revealed in a way that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The betrayal isn't over, the stakes are higher than ever, and the shocking climax is just ahead. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in the house grew thicker, almost palpable. Every visit, every phone call, every passing conversation became a test of patience and observation. My aunt's charm, which had initially fooled Grandma and others in the family, began to crack in small, almost imperceptible ways. But I noticed. I could see the strain behind her perfectly practiced smile, the moments she faltered when she thought no one was watching. Grandma, of course, was trying to keep her spirits up. She would laugh lightly at my aunt's jokes, compliment her cooking, and talk about how nice it was to be living close to family. But I knew better. I could hear the subtle tremor in her voice. When she mentioned being alone in the house, The way her hands shook slightly as she handled her personal belongings, and the nervous glances she would give when my aunt entered the room. It was like she was walking on eggshells in her own home, and my heart ached for her. Then came the small incidents, the ones that made it impossible to ignore what was happening. Grandma told me about doors being locked unexpectedly, her favorite chair being moved without explanation, bills being handled in ways she didn't approve, and subtle suggestions that she shouldn't worry about her finances. Every detail painted a picture of manipulation, control, and greed. And my aunt, she acted innocent, polite, and helpful in front of anyone else. It was infuriating how effortlessly she masked her true intentions. I knew I couldn't confront her yet. Not openly, not without evidence. That would have been like stepping into a minefield blindfolded. I had to be careful, to observe, to wait for the moment when the truth would come out so clearly that no one could deny it. I started keeping detailed notes, phone calls, small incidents, everything. I documented dates, times, conversations, and even her body language. Every subtle slip she made became a piece of the puzzle, a breadcrumb that would eventually lead to the undeniable truth. The conflict intensified one evening when I visited Grandma. She was sitting quietly in her room, staring at a photo album, when she suddenly burst into tears. "I can't believe she did this," she said, her voice breaking. "I trusted her. I thought she would care for me. I didn't expect this." And there it was again. That raw vulnerability that made me even more determined. I held her hand, told her she was safe now, and promised her that justice would come. But inside, I felt the fire building. I could feel the storm approaching, the moment when patience would meet opportunity, and everything would change. My aunt, of course, remained cunning. She tried subtle intimidation, reminding Grandma of what she had done. In terms of money, suggesting that Grandma's demands were unreasonable, and subtly planting seeds of doubt in others about my vigilance. But the more she pushed, the more transparent her intentions became. I could see her frustration growing, the cracks in her carefully maintained facade. She underestimated me, underestimated my patience, and that would be her downfall. I also began to notice how she manipulated others in the family, playing on their emotions, twisting conversations to make herself appear generous and caring. All while she controlled Grandma's life behind the scenes. I realized that this wasn't just about Grandma's savings. It was about power, control, and status within the family. And I knew that to stop her, I had to stay calm, stay observant, and be ready for the perfect moment to act. There were nights when I barely slept, going over every detail, thinking about every possible scenario, and imagining how the final confrontation would play out. I knew I couldn't let anger or impatience dictate my actions. One wrong move, one confrontation too early, and it could all backfire, putting Grandma in even more danger. That's when I understood the true meaning of strategic patience. The kind of patience that feels like tension in your chest but is powered by purpose and clarity. The tipping point came unexpectedly. One evening, Grandma confided something in me that made my blood run cold. She had overheard my aunt talking to a friend, casually mentioning how easy it would be to manage Grandma's finances and keep her in line. It wasn't a vague hint this time. It was a confession, spoken aloud without realizing someone was listening. That moment changed everything. I now had undeniable evidence that my aunt's intentions were far from genuine, that her manipulation wasn't just subtle. It was premeditated. From that point on, the conflict escalated. I started planning more actively, thinking about how to protect Grandma, secure her finances, and prepare for the day when the will would reveal the truth. Every visit, every conversation, every interaction became part of the strategy. I wasn't just reacting. I was orchestrating, observing, and calculating. And every move my aunt made, every attempt to assert control, only added fuel to the plan I was quietly building. The tension reached a fever pitch one stormy night. My aunt tried to lock Grandma out again, this time with the intent of scaring her into compliance. But I arrived just in time. I remember the look on Grandma's face as I opened the door, fear mixed with relief. That night, as we sat together, I realized something important. This wasn't just about money or betrayal. It was about preserving dignity, respect, and the truth. And that's when I knew the real battle was almost over. The rising conflict had set the stage for a climax that no one would see coming. My aunt's arrogance, overconfidence, and underestimation of me had created the perfect conditions. I had patience, I had evidence, and I had Grandma's trust. All that remained was the final act, the will reading. That's when the drama, the tension, and the shocking revelations would finally explode in front of everyone. By now, I was fully aware that this story wasn't just about exposing greed. It was about justice, strategy, and emotional resilience. Every small observation, every documented incident, and every moment of quiet patience had prepared me for the moment when the truth would be undeniable. And I knew that when it happened, the reactions would be priceless. Shock, disbelief, and finally, vindication for Grandma and for me. So hang tight, because the next chapter takes everything to a whole new level. The manipulation, the tension, and the rising conflict are about to explode into a climax that will leave everyone stunned, including my aunt. The stage is set, the players are ready, and the moment of truth is almost here. That stormy night changed everything. I'll never forget the look on Grandma's face when I arrived. Her hands trembling, eyes wide with fear, clutching her coat as if it were a lifeline. She had been pushed to the edge, forced out of her own home, her trust shattered by the very person she had loved and believed in. I felt this surge of anger, but it was different now. It wasn't blind rage. It was controlled, focused, a burning determination that justice would be served. As we sat in the warm light of my living room, Grandma recounted the events in fragmented sentences, each one slicing through the air like a blade. Her voice shook with every word, yet there was a quiet dignity beneath the fear. She wasn't a victim in her heart. She had endured, survived, and now it was time for her story to be told. I held her hand and promised that nothing would happen without her knowing, without her consent. For the first time in weeks, I saw a spark of relief in her eyes. She knew she wasn't alone anymore. That night, I made a decision. This was no longer just about protecting her physically. This was about reclaiming the narrative, about making sure her voice and her rights were honored. I began preparing, quietly and methodically, to confront the betrayal head-on. I reviewed every detail of my aunt's actions, the locked doors, the manipulations, the subtle lies, and mapped out a plan that would bring the truth into the light. The emotional weight was heavy, but it sharpened my focus. In the following days, the tension in our family became almost unbearable. My aunt had no idea that I had observed everything, that I had meticulously noted her moves, that I had built an invisible record of her greed and deceit. She continued to act the part, the caring niece, the generous relative. But I could see her confidence beginning to crack. Small mistakes, fleeting expressions of irritation, and hurried explanations betrayed her true intentions. I felt a mix of anticipation and caution. One wrong move could tip her off, but patience had been our greatest weapon. I spent hours with Grandma, listening to her stories, learning her fears, and reassuring her that she had done nothing wrong. She hadn't. Her only mistake had been trusting the wrong person. And yet, despite everything, she remained kind and hopeful, quietly teaching me that strength isn't just in confronting betrayal. It's in enduring it with grace, in holding your integrity even when others exploit your trust. Those conversations, those quiet moments of connection, fortified me emotionally. They reminded me that the battle wasn't just about money. It was about love, respect, and the preservation of dignity. Then came the day when the stakes escalated. I confronted my aunt, not directly, not yet, but through strategic actions. I began engaging other family members subtly, asking questions that hinted at inconsistencies, pointing out strange behaviors without making accusations. It was like pulling at threads in a tightly woven fabric. Slowly, others began to notice. Slowly, doubt crept into their minds, and the mask my aunt had worn so perfectly started to slip. One particularly intense afternoon, Grandma shared a moment that shook me to my core. She had discovered that my aunt had been redirecting small amounts of her savings, just enough to go unnoticed at first, but enough to betray the trust entirely. The realization hit her like a thunderclap, and I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks: raw hurt and betrayal. It was heartbreaking, but it also steeled my resolve. I couldn't let this slide. Every ounce of preparation, patience, and careful observation had led to this moment, and now, the emotional peak was upon us. As I strategized the next steps, I realized that timing was everything. The will reading was approaching, and that event would be the perfect stage for the truth to emerge, undeniable and shocking. But until then, I had to maintain composure, protect Grandma, and make sure that no slip-ups would alert my aunt to our plan. It was a delicate dance, a balance between patience and readiness, observation and action. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, replaying every conversation, imagining every possible scenario, and calculating every move. The emotional intensity was draining, but I knew that it was necessary. Every slight misstep by my aunt, every slip in her demeanor, was a victory, a signal that the tide was turning. And I could feel it. Justice was close, and the moment when everything would come crashing down was near. The emotional peak didn't just involve strategy, it was also deeply personal. Watching Grandma, seeing her resilience and quiet courage despite the betrayal, inspired me in ways I couldn't have anticipated. She taught me that even in the face of deceit, one could remain composed, kind, and determined. That emotional grounding was critical. It reminded me that this story was about more than exposing greed. It was about protecting the people we love, honoring their trust, and reclaiming what is rightfully theirs. By now, the tension had reached a breaking point. My aunt's subtle manipulations had become bolder, her impatience visible. She underestimated the bond between Grandma and me, the meticulous care with which we had observed every detail. The stage was perfectly set for the climax. Every emotion, every act of betrayal, every whispered lie had built to this crescendo. And soon, the will would be opened, revealing the shocking truth that would leave everyone in the room speechless. The turning point was clear. We were no longer waiting. The emotional momentum had shifted. The power was now on our side, fueled by patience, evidence, and love. My aunt's arrogance, once so intimidating, was now her weakness. She had overplayed her hand, underestimated the loyalty and strategy that Grandma and I had cultivated, and was about to face the consequences of her greed. And just like that, everything was poised for the ultimate revelation. The storm had passed in the outside world, but inside, the tension was electric. Every glance, every word, every heartbeat was a countdown to the moment when betrayal would meet justice, and the shocking twist would finally be unveiled to everyone. The day of the will reading arrived, and the tension in the room was thicker than anything I had ever felt. The air felt charged, heavy with expectation, suspicion, and just a hint of dread. Everyone was gathered in the lawyer's office, faces full of anticipation, curiosity, and for some greed. My aunt walked in, acting confident, polished, and utterly unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to crumble. She smiled at Grandma, a smile that was far too rehearsed, far too calculated. But I knew better. Grandma sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, calm but alert. There was a quiet dignity about her now that hadn't been there before. She had endured manipulation, betrayal, and fear, yet here she was, composed and ready. And I could barely sit still, my heart pounding with anticipation. Every detail I had gathered, every observation, every little act of deceit was about to culminate in this moment. The lawyer, a stern but fair man, began to read aloud. He spoke slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone understood that this was a legal and binding document. The final testament of my grandmother's wishes. I could feel my aunt's confidence starting to waver slightly. Just the tiniest crack as the first instructions were read. Inheritances to distant relatives, charitable donations, gifts to family members who had shown consistent care and loyalty. Each word was a quiet dagger to her ego, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Then came the big reveal. My grandmother's final wishes had a clause that no one had anticipated. She had deliberately structured the will to reward loyalty and expose betrayal. She had left instructions that anyone who had mistreated her, attempted to manipulate her, or shown greed would receive nothing. And there it was, in black and white, my aunt's name was mentioned. Not by calling her out cruelly, but legally and decisively. Her attempt to control, her deceit, and her betrayal had disqualified her from inheriting a single cent. The room went silent. My aunt froze, her confident smile vanishing in an instant. Her hands trembled, her eyes darted around, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her expression. The reality of what she had done and what she had lost finally hit her. She tried to speak, to protest, to explain herself, but the lawyer simply continued, methodical and calm, detailing how Grandma's thoughtful planning ensured that loyalty and love, not greed and deception, were the guiding principles. I watched my grandmother, and she was serene. She had known, all along, that this day would come. She had planned it meticulously, quietly, and without any of the drama we see in movies. The power of her patience, her foresight, and her wisdom had triumphed. And me, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and justice. Every sleepless night, every careful observation, every moment of strategic patience had led to this incredible, satisfying conclusion. Family members who had remained neutral, who had quietly observed the unfolding drama, were visibly shocked. Whispers filled the room, expressions of disbelief and awe on faces that had previously overlooked or underestimated my aunt's behavior. And my aunt, she sat there, speechless, her plan completely unraveled. The look of betrayal turned back on her was poetic justice. The very thing she had attempted to inflict on my grandmother now mirrored her own downfall. The lawyer continued, reading out small gifts and tokens that Grandma had left for those who had supported her, cared for her, and treated her with respect. Every item, every instruction, was a testament to loyalty, kindness, and love. And with each line, the contrast between genuine care and greed became glaringly obvious. The tension in the room, already thick, now felt almost electric. I I remember catching Grandma's eye at one point. She gave me a small nod, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. That nod said everything. The injustice had been exposed, her trust had been honored, and the long months of manipulation had finally been brought into the light. The emotional weight of that moment was staggering. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a moral, emotional, and deeply personal triumph. The most satisfying moment came at the very end, when the lawyer closed the will and looked around the room. Silence reigned. My aunt, now pale and shaken, realized fully that she had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and exposed. The realization hit her harder than any words could convey. And in that silence, I felt a surge of gratitude for Grandma's wisdom, for her courage to plan carefully, and for the opportunity to ensure justice was served. As we left the lawyer's office, Grandma held my hand, a quiet smile on her face. She didn't need to boast or gloat. Her dignity was intact, her life savings protected, and her trust finally honored. And me. I felt a mix of relief, pride, and a deep emotional resonance. We had faced betrayal, manipulation, and uncertainty, but patience, strategy, and love had carried the day. Looking back, that will reading wasn't just a legal procedure. It was a turning point, the culmination of weeks of observation, planning, and quiet endurance. It was proof that patience, integrity, and loyalty always outweigh greed, deception, and manipulation. And in that moment, the emotional climax of our story had been reached. Betrayal had been exposed, justice had been delivered, and Grandma's wisdom had shone brighter than anyone could have imagined. The storm had passed, and in its wake was clarity, justice, and a sense of emotional closure that words can hardly capture. We had survived the worst of human greed and emerged stronger, wiser, and closer than ever. And I knew, deep down, that the lessons from this experience would stay with me forever, shaping the way I approach trust, loyalty, and family forevermore. After the will reading, the room felt different. The tension that had gripped us for months lifted, replaced by this strange, heavy mix of relief and reflection. Seeing Grandma smile, calm and dignified, I realized something profound. Victory wasn't just about money or exposing betrayal. It was about preserving trust, honoring love, and protecting those who had given everything for us. There's something incredibly humbling about witnessing a life-long lesson in patience, foresight, and integrity unfold before your eyes. I remember holding Grandma's hand on the way home, feeling the weight of everything we'd endured. She squeezed my hand gently, her eyes glistening with gratitude and a hint of tears. "You've been my strength," she whispered. And in that moment, I realized how much this journey had changed me too. It wasn't just about protecting her savings. It was about learning how to navigate life's betrayals with clarity, patience, and courage. Watching her resilience, her ability to endure, and her wisdom in planning taught me lessons I'll carry forever. I want to be honest with you, dealing with betrayal from someone you trust is one of the most painful experiences you can face. It shakes the very foundation of your sense of security. You question people, question yourself, and sometimes even question your judgment. But here's the truth I learned from this journey. Betrayal doesn't define you, and patience doesn't mean weakness. It means understanding the game, observing carefully, and waiting for the right moment to protect yourself and those you love. I think about Grandma's courage often. She could have reacted impulsively, argued with my aunt, or tried to confront the betrayal head-on without a plan. But she didn't. She trusted her instincts, relied on me, and let patience guide her. And the result? Justice, respect, emotional closure, and the satisfaction of knowing that integrity and loyalty always prevail over greed and manipulation. That's a lesson I hope everyone watching this can take to heart. In the weeks following the will reading, our family dynamic changed completely. People who had been blind to my aunt's manipulations finally understood the truth. Conversations that once felt strained or tense became more honest, more open. And Grandma, she settled into her life with peace, dignity, and a renewed sense of security. Watching her live freely again, unafraid and happy, reminded me why we fight for those we love, not just for material things, but for their sense of safety, dignity, and emotional well-being. I also want to touch on something deeper here: trust. Grandma taught me that trust is sacred. When someone betrays that trust, it's devastating, yes, but it also offers an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to act with wisdom. Her decision to carefully structure her will was her way of reclaiming control, even in the face of manipulation. It's a powerful reminder that even when life seems unfair, planning, patience, and integrity can turn the tide in your favor. For anyone listening who's experienced betrayal, especially from someone you love or trust, here's what I want you to remember: don't react impulsively. Don't let anger or fear guide you. Take your time, observe carefully, document what you can, and build a plan rooted in patience, strategy, and justice. And most importantly, protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's what Grandma did, and it changed everything. Another thing this experience taught me is the value of love and loyalty in family. Material wealth can be lost, stolen, or misused, but the trust and love we nurture are priceless. Grandma's faith in family, despite everything, and her ability to distinguish between those who truly cared for her and those who didn't, set the stage for a just resolution. Her story isn't just about inheritance. It's about human nature, loyalty, and the profound impact of thoughtful, deliberate action in the face of betrayal. I'll never forget the moment Grandma turned to me after the lawyer finished reading her final wishes. She looked me in the eyes, smiled faintly, and said, "You've given me more than just safety. You've given me peace of mind." That simple statement carries more weight than any sum of money ever could. It reminded me that our actions, our dedication, and our willingness to fight for what's right can create ripples of hope and justice far beyond what we imagine. So, if you're hearing this and wondering how to handle betrayal, greed, or manipulation in your own life, take this story as a blueprint. Observe quietly, plan patiently, and act strategically, but always with integrity. And remember, protecting those you love is never wasted effort. Loyalty, patience, and courage are the true treasures that no one can steal from you. Grandma's story also reminded me that life can be unpredictable, and sometimes the people you trust the most can hurt you. But it also reminded me that careful observation, patience, and love are more powerful than deceit and greed. When we act thoughtfully, with both strategy and heart, justice finds its way, even in the most complicated family situations. In the end, I realized that this entire journey wasn't just about revenge or winning. It was about teaching a lesson in integrity, resilience, and emotional intelligence. It was about showing that betrayal can be overcome, that patience pays off, and that love and loyalty will always have the final say. And seeing Grandma safe, happy, and dignified, I knew every sleepless night, every plan, and every careful decision had been worth it. So hold on to these lessons, trust wisely, observe carefully, protect those you love, and never underestimate the power of patience and strategy. Because sometimes, the quietest, most thoughtful actions create the most profound impact. And that's exactly what happened for Grandma and me. Looking back, I realize how much this entire journey taught me. Not just about family, betrayal, or money, but about life itself. I learned that patience is more powerful than anger, observation more effective than confrontation, and love stronger than greed. Watching Grandma endure betrayal and still maintain her dignity reminded me that true strength isn't about fighting. It's about surviving with grace, then acting wisely when the moment is right. I want you to think about the people in your life who truly deserves your trust, who has shown loyalty and care in difficult times, and who might be hiding their intentions behind a smile. These are tough questions, but asking them can save you heartache and protect those you love. Grandma's story isn't just her story. It's a lesson for all of us about vigilance, discernment, and standing up for what's right without losing our humanity in the process. Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought quietly, the ones that leave scars on your heart but also teach you resilience, strategic thinking, and emotional strength. If you've ever been betrayed or hurt by someone you trusted, remember this: you don't have to react impulsively. Take your time, gather your evidence, plan carefully, and when the right moment comes, act decisively. Justice doesn't always look like confrontation. It often comes from patience, preparation, and wisdom. I also want to emphasize something crucial. Protecting loved ones is more important than seeking revenge. I didn't act out of anger toward my aunt. I acted to protect Grandma, to honor her trust, and to ensure that her life savings and dignity were preserved. And in doing so, we all witnessed a resolution that was both just and deeply satisfying. Protecting the people you love is never wasted effort. It's one of the most powerful forms of courage and loyalty. Now, as I reflect on this journey, I feel grateful. For Grandma's resilience, for the lessons learned, and for the clarity that came from facing betrayal head-on. Life will always have its twists and betrayals, but the way we respond, the choices we make, and the patience we exercise define the outcome far more than the actions of others. I hope this story inspires you to be vigilant, to value loyalty, and to act wisely in the face of deceit. Before we part ways, I want to leave you with a simple truth: integrity and patience always win in the end. The people who exploit others may have temporary control, but the truth eventually comes to light. Trust wisely, protect those who matter most, and never compromise your values, even when it seems difficult or unfair. That's what Grandma taught me, and I'll carry that lesson for the rest of my life. Thank you for listening to this story, for sharing in this journey of betrayal, strategy, and justice. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the importance of family and loyalty, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. There are many more stories like this, powerful, real, and full of lessons about life, love, and resilience. Remember, life is full of challenges and twists, but with patience, courage, and careful action, you can turn even the most painful betrayals into moments of triumph and wisdom. And never forget, protecting the people you love, honoring their trust, and acting with integrity is always worth it. So thank you again for watching, for listening, and for being part of this journey. Keep your heart strong, your minds sharp, and your loyalty unwavering. And for more stories of courage, justice, and shocking family twists, make sure to check out the next video, because the truth, the lessons, and the drama never end.